Welcome back to the show. It is heating up down under, and today we are unpacking a wild 24 hours of tennis across the United Cup and Brisbane International. We've got everything from high drama to downright bizarre in Perth, Stan Wawrinka winning a point because his opponent literally hindered himself, plus Belinda Bencic putting on an absolute masterclass to steer Switzerland to a thrilling victory over Italy. We'll also break down Great Britain's gritty win, Naomi Osaka's test of character, and Czechia's making big moves with Jacob Mensik taking down Casper Ruud. Over in Brisbane, the Special Ks are officially back. Kyrgios and Kokkinakis blew the roof off Pat Rafter Arena with an emotional win, while the Aussie singles players had mixed fortunes on home soil. And finally, we are looking ahead to a massive slate of matches. Can Alex de Minaur bounce back against a dangerous Mensik? Can France save their tournament? And is Felix Auger-Aliassime ready to steady the ship? Grab your beverage, let's get into the action. Okay, first off, we'll be reviewing China versus Canada, and we'll start off with the men's, where Felix defeated Zhang. So I have to start with a confession. I completely botched this prediction, but honestly, I am delighted to eat humble pie on this one. Everyone knows I have a soft spot for Felix, so watching him carry his late 2025 momentum straight into the new year was exactly what I wanted to see, even if my prediction suffered for it. He wasted absolutely no time snatching early breaks in both sets and suffocating the match before Zhang could even settle in. There were a few nerves bubbling under the surface because it wouldn't be a Felix match without a minor heart rate spike for the fans, but he was impenetrable on serve. Zhang simply couldn't find the code to break him. Felix spent the match marching Zhang from tramline to tramline, turning the baseline into a grueling shuttle run until the point opened up. It was a professional, commanding start to his 2026 campaign. Okay, let's look over to the women's now, where Moko defeated Lin Zhu 2-6, 6-2, 6-love. I'll keep this brief because the third set certainly was. After a rocky start where she dropped the opener, the 19-year-old completely flipped the script. She shook off the nerves, leveled the match, and then absolutely steamrolled Zhu in the decider, handing her a harsh 6-love bagel to close it out. To finish a match with that kind of ruthlessness on your United Cup debut is a serious statement. Canada certainly has a real one here. Okay, next we'll be looking at Italy versus Switzerland. Starting off with the women's, and Belinda Bencic was simply too classy in her encounter against Jasmine Paolini, taking the initiative from the outset to dictate the flow of the match. The Swiss star utilised every inch of the court, moving her opponent around with deep, aggressive placement that prevented Paolini from finding her rhythm. Paolini struggled to stay in the rallies, frequently mishitting the balls and leaking errors, particularly off her forehand wing, as she wilted under the constant pressure. Bencic's command of the court and tactical discipline ultimately secured her a dominant 6-4, 6-3 victory. It was a heart-stopping encounter at the United Cup in Perth where Stan Wawrinka and Flavio Cobolli engaged in a nearly 3-hour epic that showcased the very best of high-stakes tennis. The match was defined by razor-thin margins, with Wawrinka actually winning more total points, 103 to 102, despite falling short on the scoreboard. Both players fired 8 aces apiece, but it was Cobolli's impenetrable service games that made the difference. The Italian did not face a single break point throughout the entire contest. Wawrinka displayed his trademark grit, saving 3 of 4 break points and fighting back to claim the second set tiebreak. But Cobolli ultimately edged the decisive moments to seal a victory 6-4, 6-7, 7-6. The match also featured a bizarre moment of drama in the first set that left the crowd and Wawrinka bemused. During a rally with Cobolli serving at love 15, a spare ball tumbled out of the Italian's pocket. Cobolli let the ball drop and instinctively expecting a let. However, the umpire awarded the point to Wawrinka, a decision upheld by the supervisor under the rule that you cannot hinder yourself. So, by stopping the point on his own initiative due to his own equipment failure, Cobolli effectively forfeited the rally. While the incident briefly rattled the Italian, he managed to regroup and hold serve, setting stage for the tight tactical battle that followed. The tie hinged on a thrilling winner-takes-all mixed doubles decider where Switzerland ultimately edged out Italy to claim the victory. With the rubbers locked at 1 apiece, the Swiss pairing snatched a tight opening set fueled by sharp net play, but Italy rallied impressively to take the second and force a sudden death shootout. The momentum swung back and forth in the high-pressure finale, but the Swiss duo found an extra gear when it mattered the most, maintaining their composure to close out the match 7-5, 4-6, 10-7, and seal a memorable triumph for their country. All right, moving over now to Great Britain versus Japan. And Great Britain secured a hard-fought 2-1 victory over Japan, anchored by a solid performance in the men's singles from Billy Harris. Facing Shintaro Mochizuki, Harris proved too strong in the key moments, edging a tight opening set in a tiebreak before accelerating in the second to steal a 7-6, 6-3 win. His composure under pressure gave Great Britain the pivotal point they needed, laying the foundation for the team's overall triumph in the tie. Now, moving over to the women's, where Naomi Osaka had to adjust to a sudden change of opponent following Emma Raducanu's late withdrawal, facing Katie Swan instead in the women's singles. The Japanese star was thoroughly tested in the gritty opening set, where Swan offered spirited resistance to force a tiebreak. However, once Osaka secured the lead, her superior power and experience took over. She dominated the second set to get the job done with a 7-6, 6-1 victory, momentarily levelling the tie for Japan. And then the doubles, where Great Britain clinched the tie in a dramatic mixed doubles decider, holding off a determined Japanese pair to win 7-5, 4-6, 10-7. After splitting the first two close sets, the British duo kept their nerve in the match tiebreak, securing the crucial points to steal a 2-1 overall victory for their team. Okay, and looking out for today's review matches, we have Norway versus Czechia. And starting off with the women's, it was business as usual for Krejcikova, who delivered a professional performance to defeat Malin Helga 6-4, 6-3. While the Norwegian fought valiantly, she lacked the weapons to truly trouble the Grand Slam champion, who controlled the court with a signature measured aggression. You have to feel for Helga, whose United Cup nightmare continues. The loss extends her record in the competition to a brutal 0-9, despite her spirited efforts to break the streak. Krejcikova's solid performance puts the Czech Republic 1-0 in the tie. Now moving over to the men's, where Jakob Mensik delivered a statement win for the Czechs, overcoming Casper Ruud in a straight sets battle defined by immense power and aggression from both sides. The young Czech serve was a critical weapon throughout the match, earning him plenty of free points to keep the Norwegian at bay. Although Mensik began to visibly tire towards the end of the second set, he showed remarkable resilience to hang on in the clutch moments, digging deep to close out a gritty 7-5, 7-6 victory. All right, now we are going to be looking at the Brisbane International of day one. So the men's draw at the Brisbane International saw formidable performances highlighted by Francis Tiafoe's clinical dismantling of Alexander Vukic. The American was sharp from the first ball, exploiting Vukic's error count to cruise to a 6-2, 6-2 victory. Meanwhile, emerging talent Le Etienne displayed maturity beyond his years. The teenager stayed solid in the big moments to edge out a Camilo Ugo Carabelli in a tight opening set before pulling away to steal a 7-6, 6-3 win, marking a promising start to his campaign. On the women's side, the day was defined by contrasting fortunes for the home favourites. In a heart-wrenching home debut representing Australia, Daria Kasatkina fought bravely but was ultimately undone by double faults in a grueling 7-5, 4-6, 6-4 loss to Anastasia Potapova. However, Ayla Tomljanovic lifted the local spirit significantly. She recovered from a slow start in the second set to dominate Ilat Jacquemont with aggressive baseline hitting, closing out a comfortable 6-1, 6-3. And the atmosphere reached a fever pitch for the return of the Special Ks, with Kyrgios and Kokkinakis returning for an emotional victory over the top seed pair of Matthew Epton and Rajiv Ram. It was a match of high drama and razor-thin margins, with the Australians duo feeding off the electric energy of the crowd. After splitting the first two sets in a tight contest, they held their nerve in the decisive match tiebreak to clinch a 7-5, 4-6, 10-8 win, a result that left Kokkinakis visibly emotional in the post-match scenes, mainly because of his injury comeback. Now we'll be previewing Canada versus Belgium. I'm going to start off with the men's, where Felix is taking on Zizou. So in their maiden meeting on tour, Felix enters as the clear favourite. If the Canadian can replicate the high-level tennis he displayed against Zhang, he should be able to control this contest comfortably, provided he manages the bouts of nerves that briefly crept into his previous match. While Berg certainly has a puncher's chance, and probably a punchable face at that too, he faces a steep uphill battle here. Unless the Belgian can significantly raise his level from recent performances and exploit any potential jitteriness from across the net, expect Felix to have too much quality and advance. Now, looking at Mertens and Boko. So this will be a fascinating first career meeting between the two, where Elise Mertens enters as the heavy favourite, bringing a game built on tactical discipline and relentless consistency that often frustrates younger, aggressive opponents. For Moko, the key will be playing to her harness her raw power and keep the point short. If she gets drawn into long physical exchanges, Mertens will likely pick her apart. While Moko has the weapons to make this interesting, Mertens' experience and ability to absorb pace should ultimately provide the stability needed to navigate through this challenge. Now, looking at the preview of Australia and Czechia. So, assuming Maya Joint lines up and plays for Australia, she'll be taken on Krejcikova. So this match hangs in the balance of Maya Joint's recovery. The rising Australian star who enjoyed the meteoric breakthrough in 2025 to crack the top 40 was forced to sit out in the opening tie against Norway due to illness. If she's fit to take the court, it'll be a fascinating first encounter between her youthful high-octane baseline game and the crafty all-court artistry from Barbara. Krejcikova, a two-time Grand Slam champion, thrives on disrupting rhythm, which will be the ultimate test for the Aussie teenager. However, if Joint isn't 100%, expect Storm Hunter to step in once again. Hunter proved her worth as a capable alternate in the previous tie, but facing a player of Krejcikova's pedigree will be a significant step up in class for the experienced lefty. All right, moving over to the men's now for Alex de Minaur taking on Jakub Mensik. So Alex de Minaur enters this clash with a dominant 4-0 head-to-head record over the young Czech, but records can be deceiving when form fluctuates. While the Demon typically eats opponents like Mensik for breakfast by suffocating them with speed, his opening performance against Casper Ruud was alarming. He looked rusty, rhythmless, and frankly a step slow in a straight sets defeat. Mensik, a big hitting talent who isn't afraid of the big stage, will be licking his chops at this prospect of catching the Australian number one while he's vulnerable. If de Minaur is still shaking off the cobwebs, Mensik has the weapons to turn this into a nightmare for the home ground. But if ADM wakes up, his counterpunching should still be too much for the teenager. Off the record, I'm going to take Jakub Mensik in this one. Now, moving over to Italy versus France, where Flavio Cobolli is taken on Arthur Ringnish. This is a must-win clash for France, who are desperately trying to keep their United Cup campaign alive after a disastrous 0-3 sweep by Switzerland in their opening tie. So, while Arthur Ringnish holds a slender 2-1 lead in their head-to-head, Italy will definitely like their chances in this matchup. Cobolli arrives in Perth with sky-high confidence after his gritty win over Stan Wawrinka, the same player who defeated Ringnish just days ago. With the French team effectively needing a miracle to qualify as a best runner-up, the pressure is squarely on Ringnish to arrest the slide, but the momentum and recent form heavily favour the Italian to pile more misery on Les Bleus. In this first career meeting, world number 8 Jasmine Paolini takes on France's Léolie Jeanjean in a rubber that heavily favours the Italian. Paolini will be eager to reset after a tough loss to Bencic, where she struggled to impose her game against the Swiss star's relentless baseline hitting. Jeanjean, ranked outside the top 100, is a crafty competitor who can mix up play, but she faces a massive step up in class here. Having also lost to Bencic in straight sets earlier in the week, the Frenchwoman will need to play the match of her life to trouble the Roland Garros finalist. If Paolini can rediscover her rhythm and control the rallies with her heavy forehand, she should have too much firepower for Jeanjean, likely sealing the match in straight sets to put Italy in a commanding position. Okay, guys, that is a wrap on a massive day of action from the United Cup and Brisbane. But before I sign off, I want your predictions for tomorrow. After seeing Mensik take down Ruud, are you backing him to upset Alex de Minaur on home soil like myself? And with the special case back in business, do you think they can actually go all the way and lift the title in Brisbane? Let me know what you think. Shoot me a reply on X or drop your thoughts in the comments if you're listening on Spotify. I'll be reading out the boldest takes on the next show. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the tennis, and I'll catch you in the next one.